Bridgerton is back and we finally hit Benedict's season. Now, season one, Benedict was actually my favorite male character, but he sort of fell off once we got to Anthony's season. He became my favorite Bridgerton man. Hated Colin, and I'll get to that in a different video, but I was eagerly awaiting Benedict's season so I could fall back in love with him because the way they made his character go through a journey throughout the seasons, I wasn't really feeling. Now, we were leaning into him being the artist of the family, struggling with his self-worth. And I feel like in season three, we kind of fell off of that. He was all over the place. But I understand this was probably a setup for season four where he finds himself and Sophie. Now, I feel some type of way about how a lot of shows and movies make it so that a man needs a woman to fix himself. I'm okay with it as inspiration, but we should not be relying on a woman to fix a man. He can find his own way. Nevertheless, let's jump into what happens so far in season four. I finished part one in a day, even though I told myself to pace myself since we're going to be waiting a little while for part two. Now, I did not read Benedict's book. The only book I read was the one for Anthony, and I know that they made some changes for all of the characters from the books to the show. In season four, Benedict is set up as a rake. Now, this is a bit different, in my opinion, from the other seasons where he was more of a free spirit. He was exploring his sexuality, exploring the freedoms as a male he can have in society. Season four, he was just lost, especially since Anthony has gone with Kate to India to reconnect with her life over there and have their child so that her child knows their roots from Kate's side of the family. Love that. Benedict has to step in as the second son and take care of things as a pseudo Viscount. Now, he looks miserable the whole time. Understandable because he was not trained to be the Viscount as the second son. But also, it keeps reminding him that he really doesn't have a place. He, in fact, says several times he doesn't feel like he has a place with his own family, which was interesting to me because he always seemed like he was at the center of the family, especially with Eloise. The two of them were like this. So it was very surprising to hear him say to Sophie that he feels out of place even amongst his own family members. But anyway, as he's the temporary Viscount, he looks completely bored. I don't even know if he realizes what he's signing. He might be tanking their finances right now. But it's finally time for him to come back out into society and stop his rakish ways, at least temporarily. His mother requests his presence at the Bridgerton ball, especially because they're finally opening the season. And this is an honor that Lady Danbury has had for decades since she became friends with Queen Charlotte. Now, of course, Benedict shows up late, but he shows up, expecting to be bored and having to go through the motions. And he's walking through the crowd and he sees Sophie looking up, just enraptured in the chandeliers. And to him, this is odd because he's used to the women in society more so clamoring for his and his brother's attention. Sophie was not there for any male attention. She didn't want any attention at all. She was just there to enjoy herself. Now, Sophie is set up as this tragic figure. Sophie is an illegitimate daughter of an earl who has passed away and has been left with her stepmother and stepsisters. One of the stepsisters is super cruel along with the stepmother, whereas the youngest stepsister, Posey, I already like, and she tries her best to be friends with her half-sister, but unfortunately she's a little meek and she's railroaded by her mother and older sister. So really Sophie only has friends with the other staff because Sophie is forced to be a servant in what I believe is her own home. I don't know if this is like part of the books because like I said, I didn't read that book, but I feel like the way the stepmother is acting, maybe her father hadn't left, like he didn't leave her destitute. I feel like he left something in the will. Anyway, The story goes so far that Sophie's father fell in love with a maid, one of his maids, and they had Sophie. Now, I think her mother passed away. We don't get really much of a story on the mother, but I suspect there's more to the story because Sophie has this really nice necklace that she keeps on her, she keeps hidden. And I feel like it came from her mother. There's some story going on there. In any case, Sophie thinks she's broke. She has no marriage prospects because she is not a lady like the other ladies, like the Bridgerton girls. So she can't be married off to a lord. She has to work and labor for her survival. Now, her stepmother works her to the bone. They reveal later on in the episodes that Sophie has been doing the work of like 5 servants ever since her father passed. And of course, the stepmother is doing this to be petty. What I'm not clear on is if her father cheated on Araminta, that's her stepmother's name, and had her, or Araminta is just mad at the fact she didn't know her new husband had a kid in the first place before she married him. Understandable, but you don't have to take that out on the kid. Anyway, finally, Sophie and Benedict meet. Benedict thinks she's this flirty girl pretending she can't dance, so he teaches her how to dance. It was a super sweet scene. Honestly, their scene at meeting like each other was so cute. And unlike the Cinderella story, she doesn't leave behind a shoe at midnight. She leaves behind a glove, which is a vintage glove that she took from her home, and it actually has a sigil for her house. So this is a little clue for Benedict to come find her. Now, Benedict begins his search, and I have to laugh at this because he's searching for who the hidden woman was in white because, you know, it was a masquerade ball. She was wearing a mask. Why is he speaking to non-Asian girls? Like, she was standing right here. You saw she was Asian. So why are you speaking to the white, black, Indian, like... Like, you know what she looks like. You're just missing the top half of her face. He especially seems to fixate on her lips. And it's crazy because he ends up meeting Sophie and not realizing this is the woman that he claims he's in love with. Crazy story, but you know, this is a fantasy. We have to dispense with some of our disbelief. Anyway, Sophie gets fired by her stepmother because her stepmother realizes she had gone to the party and she could have brought shame upon the family or whatever. She just doesn't want Sophie to have a good life. So she fires her, and Sophie has to go to the countryside to find employment because Araminta badmouthed her across all of London, so she can't find employment anywhere else. Like, the pettiness. Like, you wanted her poor and destitute on the streets. Anyway, she's on the countryside, and what a coincidence, she's working for one of Benedict's acquaintances. And Benedict comes to this party held at the house where Sophie happens to be working. Now, there's a scene where some of these gentlemen at the party almost harm Sophie and her friend, and Benedict heroically steps in even though he doesn't know them and he thinks they're servants. It just goes to show, like, the Bridgerton men, you could say what you want about them, but Violet raised them well. She raised them to be real gentlemen. He was not going to stand by while 2 defenseless women, even though they weren't ladies or noble women, were assaulted. So he jumps in to save them. He gets injured, and Sophie loses another job. So he promises he'll find her employment, and they ride together through the rain to his cottage, which I was like, in this time period, it's super inappropriate. Maybe because she's a maid, it's not, but I was like, you two should not be alone together. But what other options did she have? She couldn't go back to where she was staying. They stay there for a bit. She helps heal him. There was a dramatic scene where he catches a fever because he did not treat his wound, and she helps save him with, what was it, just alcohol? She just killed the infection, whatever. I'm not a doctor. And now he's especially enraptured with her because she's headstrong, she's independent, and she saved his life. Finally, they have some. Finally, the two caretakers of the cottage come, so they at least have someone supervising them so nothing untoward happens. But they end up slowly falling in love with each other. Sophie is so tempted to tell him, like, I am the person you're looking for, but she's afraid because she's gone through so many struggles throughout her life. They show several flashbacks, and she feels like if she tells him who she really is, he's going to reject her. And she wants to remember that night they had fondly. It was one of the highlights of her life, if not the only highlight of her life. Finally, they go back to London, and she finds out that Benedict found her a job in the Bridgerton house. And at first she's upset. She feels like she was tricked. She feels like he's trying to set her up, like, to be a mistress. But she finds out he's just a man of his word. He had also promised to get her friend a job there, and he did. And they're both living a good life because the Bridgertons, unlike a lot of the other noble people in town, actually treat their staff well. They pay them well, they're happy, and there was a whole maids war that happened. Like, maids were leaving their houses because they knew they could get money better, like better money elsewhere. But the Bridgertons never had that problem because they treat their staff with respect and they pay them accordingly. It was so sweet. Anyway, Sophie's living a good life. The Bridgertons like her. But she and Benedict keep running into each other and having these strong feelings for each other. Finally, Benedict seduces her. And this is what I can't stand about all the Bridgerton men. They keep ruining the women. And I have a problem with that word choice. But in this time period, it is dangerous to ruin a woman because it can ruin her life if people find out. And they know that. They protect their own sisters very well, in their opinion. But they have no issue about ruining other women. Anyway, they fall into their, lust for each other, and he ruins her, and they're looking at each other so intensely. I'm at the edge of my seat. And he's like, will you be? And I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know what Sophie was expecting. It couldn't be girlfriend. I don't know if he was going to ask for wife, or I don't know. But this man has the nerve to say, will you be my mistress? Immediately, cold water, like, kills the vibe. Sophie doesn't even respond because what can you even say? She just walks out, goes with her friends to the tavern, and they both don't say anything to each other. I feel like that was the best choice because whatever she was going to say probably would have gotten her fired. It would have got me fired. I'm trying not to be judgmental here because what in society, a maid and a lord, it would not be accepted. Okay? He doesn't even know she's the illegitimate child of an earl. I don't know if that changes anything. I won't even know how does the story end? I'm so curious. But in his mind, he loves her, and this is the only way they can be together. However, on Sophie's end, this is one of her worst fears because her mother was in the same position as her. Okay? A maid and an earl. And we already see the power dynamic issue here. And Benedict was warned about this, by the way. I can't remember the caretaker's name at his cottage, but she warned him, and I thought he understood. She said, even if she did, what if she didn't want you? What if Sophie didn't want Benedict? Can she really say no when her livelihood depends on him being happy? Anyway, we do know that Sophie wants him, but we don't know what her mother's dynamic was with her father. Sophie's mother became her father's mistress. Where's her mother now? Her mother is not living happily, and look at what happened to her as their child. She's poor, almost destitute, living at the whims of a rich man. And honestly, asking someone to be your mistress, I feel like in Benedict's mind is him professing his love, but it's not really that. So all Sophie can do is walk away, and honestly, I do not blame her My heart broke for her. I do not know how they're going to get through this. I don't know how she's gonna face him, how he's gonna face her, and how they're supposed to end up in love and married at the end of this. Maybe I have to go read the book. Feel free to spoil it for me in the comments. I'm actually okay with spoilers right now because I cannot wait for them to put part 2 out. This is agonizing. But let me know what you thought here. I'm gonna make another video about the order in which I'd prefer the leading Bridgerton men, including Simon, based on their behavior, because my God, like every season I'm like, what the heck are they thinking?